In a remote, rugged area along the Canadian-US border, I often embark on hikes and occasionally camp for a night or two. Typically, I venture into the wilderness without a set plan, opting to discover unfamiliar trails and relishing the thrill of the unknown. Despite the lack of a predetermined route, I ensure preparedness for emergencies, equipping myself with various navigation tools. One early summer day this year, I found myself on a seemingly random trail deep within the forest near my cabin. Although unexplored by me previously, I had encountered it weeks earlier when it intersected with another trail. The path was faint, much like others in the area, leaving me to ponder whether it truly qualified as a trail or if I merely imagined its existence. Approximately 2 hours into the hike, I began noticing shoe prints along the muddier sections of the trail. These prints were sporadic, diverging from the path rather than following it. Intriguingly, after a while, I stumbled upon a more definite section of the trail, marked by numerous shoe prints, suggesting frequent passage. Following this path, I eventually reached a cabin. Connecting the dots, I assumed someone had established an off-grid dwelling. However, upon closer inspection, something seemed amiss. Despite the freshness of the shoe prints, the cabin appeared uninhabited for years. The door hung open, barely clinging to its hinges, and portions of the structure showed signs of extensive weathering, causing it to sink into the ground. Driven by curiosity and a sense of obligation to help, I entered the area cleared around the cabin. The peculiar allure of the place intensified as I surveyed the interior. To my surprise, the cabin exhibited signs of wild animals nesting inside, and vegetation had claimed the floorboards. Despite my attempts to explore further, an overpowering and repugnant odor halted my progress after just a few feet. As I turned to leave, my stomach sank when I spotted a figure staring at me from the forest. The person hastily retreated, blending into the dense foliage. Reacting instinctively, I followed suit, navigating through the trees and sticking to the path until I felt a sense of safety. Upon returning home, I reported the bizarre encounter with the abandoned cabin to authorities. Several days passed before a search party, guided by my directions, investigated the site. However, all that remained were black ashes and charred wood. The cabin had been burned down. To this day, the mystery of the eerie cabin and the man in the forest remains unsolved. It is evident that he had something to conceal, something he sought to cover up. I can't shake the fear that had I lingered or delved deeper into the cabin, I might not have escaped unscathed. I serve as an officer in our local police department, and our shifts frequently rotate, with officers working 10 to 12 hours on varying schedules each week. Sometimes it involves overnight shifts, followed by early morning duties, and then another night shift. During one of my shifts from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m., I received a call from a dispatcher about a group of teenagers trespassing on private property. The location in question was an abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town, a known spot for illegal activities. Having been there multiple times before, I expected a routine case of either escorting the group out or watching them scatter. Upon arriving, I noticed a flashlight moving rapidly through the windows on the second story, as if someone was running through the hallway. Despite my fatigue, I prepared my flashlight and entered the building, calling out for everyone to show themselves. No response. The silence unnerved me, and I kept my hand on my gun holster as I listened for any signs of movement. Navigating through the old hallway and up the stairs, I heard a thud from the second floor. It was as I reached the top that I called out aggressively, but no one answered. I cautiously explored the rooms, finding only old hospital beds and graffiti. The last room had signs of recent activity, with cigarettes on the ground still emitting smoke. As I investigated, the door behind me slammed shut, and something smashed against it. Footsteps retreated down the hallway. I managed to force the door open, revealing a large hospital bed pressed against it. The intruders had vanished by the time backup arrived. During a thorough investigation, we discovered that the 2 teenagers reported by the caller were missing. The strange part was that there was only one set of footsteps and one flashlight seen through the window. The burning cigarette suggested a hasty departure, possibly triggered by my arrival. However, the question lingered. Why did one of them stay behind? In the following days, weeks, and months, the search for the missing teenagers yielded no results. 6 years later, their disappearance remains a mystery. The prevailing theory is that the person in the hospital with me was not one of the missing teens, but someone else. Unless new information surfaces, the truth may forever elude us. I reside in a quaint countryside town with a population of just a few thousand. The nearest city is a couple of hours away, and in such a close-knit community, everyone is familiar with each other. During my high school days, I had a best friend named Chris, and we practically hung out every day. In mid-fall, there was a lot of buzz about an abandoned farmhouse in town that people were exploring. Though not usually one for such activities, Chris was eager, and I couldn't deny my curiosity. The farmhouse, abandoned for the past 5 years, became a hot topic, with stories circulating around town. One weekend night, Chris and I, armed with flashlights, decided to investigate. We only knew the general road, and finding it wasn't difficult. From a distance, we could see the decaying house, but locating the driveway proved challenging. We assumed it had been overgrown or non-existent, so we parked on the road and walked through the field towards the house. By 1 a.m., the moon provided just enough light to guide us. As we approached, the night seemed to grow quieter. Weeds infested the yard, and vines snaked through the wooden panels. Chris led the way, finding the missing front door, granting us easy access. We explored the rooms on the first floor, noting the trash and decaying interior, questioning why it was abandoned. Moving upstairs, it was much darker, as if there were no windows. Armed with flashlights, we found only 2 rooms. Chris struggled with a locked door on the left, while I entered the unlocked room on the right, finding it entirely empty except for a window covered with wood slabs. Curious, I crouched to investigate and saw a figure walking towards the farmhouse through the moonlit grass. Alarmed, I whispered to Chris, realizing it wasn't just other kids exploring. We froze as footsteps entered the house downstairs. Listening intently, we heard the footsteps climbing the stairs and a large figure appeared in front of us. Facing the other way, he unlocked the locked door in the dark hallway, standing just a few feet away. Holding our breath, we avoided eye contact, but as the door opened, I locked eyes with another man on the far side of the room. They whispered immediately after, prompting Chris and me to sprint down the stairs and out of the house, footsteps charging behind us. Reaching the field, we ran until we reached the car, driving away in silence. We didn't speak during the entire ride back, realizing the gravity of our actions. Despite the unsettling encounter, we refrained from calling the police due to the fear of trespassing charges. A month later, the farmhouse was mysteriously bought and torn down with no explanation. Whether something nefarious was happening there remains unknown, and the peculiar incident at the farmhouse continues to haunt our memories.